Tangle friends, I'm Annie, and today I'd like to welcome you to part 2 of Mak-Rah-Mee as a string. Last time, I just want you to know, in case you're joining me for the first time, I've already done part 1, and it was showing you how to draw this Mak-Rah-Mee string. And I'm calling this a string because we're going to use each of these divided areas to add tangles in, so that we end up with results something like this. Unfortunately, I got a phone call, and when I came back, I noticed when I started taping again, I wasn't being recorded. So I did these 2 tangles. I can't redo them, but I can tell you this one is Zendala, and it is by Headquarters. You'll see my little note in my video. I'm going to add notes. And this one is Poke Root. And these are both headquarter tangles from a Zen-tangle, and it's very easy to find the step outs. So those are the first 2. What I did explain was that I'm trying to alternate in the spaces between the red and the black pen as my main drawing pen. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 different spaces here, just as I had here. So my next space is going to have to be a red. I think I'm going to do my Pangea pepper bloom there. Pangea pepper bloom looks like this. And I did do a tutorial on that. I will put it in the description below with a link so you can learn that in very great detail. Here I'm just going to draw it quickly for you. So I like to fill in this negative space here, these areas with little perfs, little tipple, and they're just different sized pearls. And then I'll go back in and fill those interstices in black. I noticed I should probably continue one down in here, pretend that we know what's going on, and make a dividing petal here and maybe one here. The center would be over here somewhere, so we can't put that in. Just re-emphasizing those petal sections and making the line a little bit thicker. And we're ready to go on to this next section, which I think I'm going to go ahead and put the tangle Toodles in there with black. This is Toodles, also a tangle from Headquarters, and it's got also a very similar background here. I've done the perfs. Those could actually be in red. Let me see how it'll look. So black again, and I'm just going to start my first Toodles maybe here, which is kind of an inverted S shape with a pinched parallel line. And then from the bottom here, we're going to flare out to almost a fescue. From here again, flare out. And then we're going to join these in a leaf shape that's almost like a spade. So we want to come up here to end the shape, but we always want to encompass that fescue. And then I'm just going to keep on doing this in drawing, the method of drawing behind and fanning out. So I'm going to do one going this direction. Just like I said, I think I'm going to do these interstices, these negative spaces, with perfs in the red. Just like we did here. So when we make our little circles and they touch each other, they make kind of a little triangular space that needs to be filled in to help them kind of pop. There's that one, and now we're going to go on to this area, which is going to be in the red, and I would like to do cubine here. I'm going to just go over this and just use this as my line to start my cubine grid. Cubine is also from Zentangle, and you can find the step out on tanglepatterns.com. I did a tutorial on cubine, and so I will put that link to that tutorial in my description below. Here I'm just trying to make somewhat of an equal grid with sort of squares. And I'm going to just turn it and then find my square, and I'm going to make a diagonal line and fill a little square in the corner. With these square lines being parallel to those given lines. Okay, so that is cubine, and now we're going to fill in the final string area with the black pen. I'm going to do a tangle called Sanibel. Sanibel is like little shells, little seashells, little scallops, and they look a little bit like clouds. So I'm going to start here in the corner and just make these little like seashell scallops layered on top of each other. So right now they look like little clouds, or almost like the butt of a sheep. And then we're going to go in and put some ribbing in there that makes it feel like a shell. So starting from the first ridge, I'm going to go down to the center point and curve. Curve, curve, curve. Always toward the center. You could fill in this area up here dark, or pretend like the scallops are continuing. So there, one of the other things I'd like to do on this one is weight the line where the scallops are overlapping. And you don't have to do it on every one. I am going to go ahead and fill these areas. Now all we have to do is shade. But I just want to show you how dramatic the shading is. Look at this flat drawing compared to this shaded one. So that's the look we're going to go for. So I'm going to as always, shade. Let's start with the black first. Let's just do it with the graphite pencil first. I've got a 2B graphite pencil, and I'm going to start with Sanibel. Sanibel is very easy to shade. You just go at the top of the scallop and lay down a bit of graphite. And then we're going to get our tortillon, and we're going to blend up and away, and I am going to try to emphasize these divisional lines a little bit, pulling that graphite up along there. I'm using a soft circular motion to blend. Just see how this separates this shell from this shell. It's pushing this one to the background and bringing this to the foreground. So one of the other things I like to do is shade underneath these tendrils, these mucas, because this lifts this up higher and it makes it look like this is receding into the background. So I'm going to put some underneath the muca on the underside only, and then blend that out. And if you have any spots where you think you need to lift, just get your kneaded eraser. I think this is a little dark right here, so I'm just going to lift a tiny bit. And as I always say, when I lift, I go back and reblend, just to get the right transitional balance. Okay, so there is Sanibel, and now we're still on the black. Let's go over here to our poke leaf, or our toodles. It looks a lot like poke leaf. And I like to just put some graphite along here on both sides along that midrib. And then I'll show you how I blend it out. Blending it out to leave this area kind of puffed up where the leaf is the fattest, right? Leaving a highlight here. You can also add a little bit down here underneath, just with what's on your tortillon. So as you can see, I have a little bit of shading under here. That helps bring that rounded part of the leaf up. And then just like with this muca over here, we're going to put some graphite under here. And you could take your brown or your henna and shade a little bit around the leaves here to kind of lift them up from those little perfs. There is that. Some of this is a little bit dark, so I'm just going to lift. And then we're going to go on to the Pangea pepper blooms, and I'm going to shade them a little bit like a flower. And then I'm going to put a little bit of graphite around here, and then just sort of kind of down the middle. And I see here I forgot a little spot as well. That needs to be black. Space in between. So to blend the shading of this henna, I'm going to take my solvent blender, which is this Prismacolor one, and I'm going to take the finer edge, and I've always got a piece of scrap paper here nearby so that I can wipe off and clean my tip in between. So watch this. Right now it looks like it's just getting very wet, but it is blending this into a more smooth, almost watercolor wash with the solvent. It's melting the pigment into the tooth of the paper so that it's no longer scratchy and bumpy, strokey. And we're going to do the same thing over here. Because this is a tan tile, it looks really strange at first. Don't be afraid of it. It looks like, oh my gosh, I'm going to ruin it. But it'll dry. It's just making the tan tile dark while it's also blending. So that looks already a lot better. And if you'd like to get some really dark darks in the centers of those flowers, you can take the Caput Mortuum and even add a little bit of that. Just hitting that up with the blender as well. And we're going to come back in and put some really bright highlights on that too. So next is poke cherry. I'm sorry, it's called poke root. I keep thinking of a choke cherry because it looks like a choke cherry. It's poke root. And I like to shade that just by putting a little bit of graphite under this little kind of frown and on one side of the cherry. And then we'll blend that out. We're always wanting to keep one side in highlight. You don't need a whole lot of graphite because this paper is so soft, it blends very nicely. And we might have to lift. In fact, I might have too much graphite. Blending away from the edge into the light till we get a nice transition. We just want to make this look a little bit spherical. And then, of course, when you have any crossover, like here, you can put a little bit of graphite on either side. That's just a very fine detail. And then, of course, same here, we want to lift these mucas up. And you can also put a little bit on the edges here to make that whole pattern recede down into the depths like this. It's okay that we're covering up what's shaded there already. It's just part of the illusion that it's just another layer on top getting darker. You always want this little dimple area to be dark because that, if that were a real botanical and the stem were going into the fruit there, it would make that appear to be a shaded area. Okay, so on this one I like to do what we call pillow shading, and that's nothing more than going all the way around the edge. And of course, along the tendrils, along the mucus. Just the underside so that it's like undercut here, right? And once again, to get a nice even blend and transition, we're going to use the blender, the solvent blender. This time I'm going to use a larger tip. I'm not dwelling on this. The important thing is with these solvent blenders that you don't mash in and make the paper totally wet. You're just trying to get that pigment melted, kind of. Just want to blend it out so that it looks like it's almost been painted on there with a watercolor wash. So I'm going for the larger tip here because this is a large area. I'm going to let that dry, and we might have to go back and add a little bit more. Maybe especially, don't forget to clean, maybe especially some darker darks down here. This is the Caput Mortuum now. It's just a little bit darker than the Henna. I'm adding a little bit of the lighter just to make this transition not such a harsh line. Cleaning up some areas. Okay, looking pretty good. And then now we're just left with the cubine. And in my tutorial on cubine, I go into great detail on how to shade that. But if we look at this, and this is our cubine, and we have the light coming this way, this would be very light right down here, and this would be the next darkest shadow. So I'm going to put this side all in the henna. And then again, we're going to blend that out. Trying to stay away from the big globs of ink in there because they could be drug back in to the tile. Even though it's permanent, sometimes these solvent blenders seem to pick that up. So we're just trying to stay on the coloring, just kind of hitting it up. Then finally, we're going to add some beautiful bright highlights with our General's Charcoal White. Make sure it's nice and sharp. And let's start with Sanibel. We're going to put some highlights on the tops of these scallops. And then when I use this white, I like to designate a brand new tortillon for that to kind of blend it out, trying to stay as much away from the graphite as I can. Just kind of blending that in so it's not such a harsh line. And like I said before, somehow I feel like this paper just absorbs this stuff, and I have to go back in and restate. And on Enzeppel, I like to just emphasize a little bit of highlight here in the center. Just hit it up a little bit with the charcoal, where if this were a pillow, like I said, pillow shading, round here is the darker area, and this would be bowing up in the light. Just kind of here in the center area. Just adds a little bit of character. Looks like I actually forgot. That's the good thing about shading and reworking your spaces. You find all the little things you forget. Okay, so that's that. And then on the choke cherry, or I'm sorry, the poke root, I'm just never going to get over this. I'm just going to add a little bit of graphite, or a little bit of the white charcoal on this side that should be in highlight, and we'll blend that out to kind of meet up with the darker areas. There's always more than one way to shade, and I do like letting, you know, some of the tan paper show through, obviously. That's the beauty. This is what makes it look so much like a true Renaissance drawing. That, you know, the artist used white chalk or white charcoal, sepia, and actual charcoal pencils. And this looks so much like that. But they let the paper, color of the paper shine through as well. So you don't want to cover that beautiful tan up completely. I'm going to hit this guy up a little bit more. See, it just kind of absorbs. Okay, so there's the poke root. And then on the Pangea pepper blooms, I would put a little bit on the edges of all of the flowers. You could even do a tiny bit in the center. Nina's, she's dreaming. And then on the toodles, we will just highlight that one left side again, just like with the choke cherry, or the poke root. Where that leaf seems to be kind of fleshy, right? Sort of fleshy right here. And then on the cubine, we have, like I said, the light we're coming from here. This side is dark in the shadow, and this would be lit up, the bottom. And I would say that is pretty much finished. I think that that would be a finished piece. As you can see, we've got two going on. Aren't they pretty? They just really look so Renaissance-like to me. So enjoy shading. I always like that almost the best because it's kind of like the frosting on the cake for me. And take your tile, hold it this way and that. Make sure to get your top on there somewhere. Sign the back and date it if you can. And just keep going back. I see I forgot here to do a little bit of shading on this muka. And just go back and give it a little more love, however, whatever it needs. One more thing I wanted to mention to you is that this has a lot of graphite on here and a lot of the General's white charcoal. And those smear quite a bit if you handle your tile a lot. So what I like to do after I'm finished with these is spray them with a Workable Fixative. And one of my favorite ones is Blair Matte Spray Fix. Also, I use Krylon Workable Fixative. And it's very important that you get a fixative that is archival, meaning that it won't yellow your paper. So this one is one, it stops smudging, but it's also archival. And so is the Krylon. So that I will definitely be spraying this a couple coats at least, and then it won't smear quite so much. I hope that gives you a nice tip so that you can handle your tile and appreciate it, because they become like our little children, right? Well, anyway, thanks again for joining me. See you next time. That's it for today's Tangle. Thanks for joining me. If you like these lunchtime tutorials, please give them a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also invite you to check out my website for classes that I have scheduled or to purchase my Tangle tags for your favorite step outs. That's botangle.net. I'm leaving you with some other links too. Zentangle.com, where you can learn more about the Zentangle method from its founders, Rick Roberts and Maria Thomas. You can also visit their store there for a multitude of Zentangle paper tiles, tools, books, and kits. Tanglepatterns.com is that site I talk about where you can explore hundreds of tangle patterns, read about them, and get the step out, which is basically the deconstruction of the pattern. And finally, if you'd like to share your beautiful results with me and my student community, please join Annie's Botangle Alumni Facebook page. We're a private group where we inspire each other with our work and offer tips and useful information about art and Zentangle.